So I have been at CSOLs on and off for about 4 years as a senior informatics consultant. I've been in the industry about 25 years, and mostly in pharmaceuticals. Started back a long time ago as a validation technician, worked my way up through the ranks in pharma to validation engineer, and then with the 21 Part 11 came out, so that's kind of dating me. I became a 21 Part 11 expert and then kind of went into quality, working with informatics systems to close CFR 21 Part 11 gaps, things of that nature. A lot of revalidation and strategy and that kind of stuff. And then continued my way up and ended up being a quality director at a few places. But I always spent a lot of time in the ISIT realm, acting as a lead for projects both with CSOLs and with some of the large pharmaceutical companies I've worked for over the years. So I've had a lot of experience doing what I'm talking about today. I've had several project leadership experiences through not only my company that I worked for previously and other companies, but also through CSOLs. So I have a lot of experience with Labware, Sample Manager, SAP is a LIMS, all the different PM things, Maximo, Empower, EDMS systems, pretty much all that stuff and integrated together and globally in a lot of cases. So that's kind of my background, and so we'll continue on. Okay, so agenda. So let's go through the agenda here. So prereqs, what do we have so far? So we're really not going to discuss the prereqs in detail, but we're going to kind of throw them out there because a lot of projects are, in this kind of prerequisite stage when they look for a leadership person. So we'll go ahead and get into this. But, all these elements listed in the agenda kind of add up to a right first time LIMS implementation. So, and we don't want to have a do-over. Okay. So this graphic here just kind of adds up everything and shows you that project leadership up there in the cloud, brainstorming, and then you have your pre-planning activities, and then below that, you have your understanding and aligning requirements, OCM, which we'll talk about if you haven't heard of it, and deployment strategy and phasing. So together, the project leader helps the pre-planning project with all these different elements and their experience and so forth to drive these things. Okay. So prerequisites, what do we have so far? So this webinar was designed with the following kind of set of prerequisites in mind. So typically at this point, you have selected a product, right? It could be any number of them. I got a few here on the screen. You've probably heard of them. There's lots of other products out there, and CSOLs likes to call that we are vendor neutral. We will help with any LIMS, but we do have partnerships with these guys here. So you've selected something. You have funding in place, right? So without that, you will not go very far. You are developing user requirements or in the process of them being developed. Typically in the organizations that we've dealt with, or your organization in general, you're going to have some kind of project governance structure in place, right? So you're going to have things like PMO. You're going to have a steering committee who's kind of rudimentarily been put together. You're going to have some stakeholders on board, So if you don't have these things, obviously it's tough to get going. And, let's say you didn't pick a product yet. We would be able to help you with that, as well as putting together the structure, project charter, all this kind of stuff. So we've done all that stuff as well. But really, we're not going to cover those in detail today, but just mentioning them that you kind of need to have those in place before you can move forward. All right. So pre-planning, why is it important? Upfront planning, these kind of activities is, going to get things going in the right direction. So this whole slideshow will kind of elucidate that for us. Okay. Again, pre-planning, why is it important? So going through this slide here, so the project as a whole is laid out for all the stakeholders to see and agree upon. It's going to clearly state what you were doing, why you're doing it, and the intended outcomes. You'll take this time to determine roles, resources, and if you have the right people for the project. So, very important that the team is, has the right mix of people from different areas within the business to ensure success, right? Next in the pre-planning process is deciding how to go about rolling out the implementation. So this can be done through a phased approach or everything at once, which is a big bang, which I'm not a huge fan of. So once you've decided on an approach, it's time to establish the deliverables and timelines based on whatever approach you've chosen. But not only that, you'll figure out timelines and deliverables and all those kind of things, and are they rational and achievable? Okay. So milestones and achievements. You do this because teams need goals, right? So let's say you're climbing Mount Everest, right? And that's a team goal, like say day 3, you reach base camp 1. And then you take time to reflect and celebrate the achievement. So, you're not going to eat the elephant in one bite, and having these milestones and achievements help to solidify the team and, get them moving in the right direction and get them enthusiastic about the project, and the business also enthusiastic. So how should you define success? And just as important, how is failure defined? So without this, how will you know if you're met your goals? How will you know what to aim for? What will keep you on track? So pre-planning, very important, and we'll define it a little more as we continue on through the slides. Pre-planning is frequently overlooked due to some of the things I have listed. So excitement. So the project, people can be blinded by what the finished product will give us. Very excited. We want to dive in head first and get this done as soon as possible. It could be just the fact that you have the budget and the money's there and you have a good team and you're ready to go. But you don't want to overlook the pre-planning. So you may have some organizational pressures to get going, right? You could have senior management has this on their annual review. Okay, we're going to have LIMS in by the end of 2020, and so get going, right? Those kind of things. And internally, you may have just some disgruntled people who just want a better solution for their lives in the laboratory, things of that nature. Some external pressures you may have to overcome. So you may have a customer request from an audit that said, well, we said we would have a LIMS in place in 2020. And so, everybody's looking at you to get going. You could have audit gaps, of course, internal and external, from customers and regulatory people and things of that nature. And then, of course, regulatory pressures, right? So you could have let's say you had a FDA audit and you had some data integrity gaps, and they didn't like the fact that analysts were transcribing a lot of data, when they could easily put a LIMS in and have that picked up electronically. So those are kind of some examples of pressures that you can have to get you away from pre-planning. So how do you overcome that kind of stuff? So you add a project leader, somebody with experience to your team, who will understand the importance of these pre-planning steps and make sure it takes place. But make sure this person is experienced. This means, for instance, they know the product, or at least a very good understanding of what the product is and what you're going to do with it. They have the regulatory knowledge. So if you're in the regulatory space, they have the knowledge of data integrity, 2111, CFR 210, 211, all that kind of stuff, EU. And they have years of experience planning, deploying, and implementing lab informatics projects, and they spend the amount of time pre-planning. So, you know, they're going to know from experience what to do and how to do it correctly. And that's something that is very important in this pre-planning phase. So now we'll talk about the project leadership component. Okay, so project leadership during pre-planning, we have some enabling factors. So these are some common factors. So like without the accountability for a diligent and deliberate project accountability, your execution is going to suffer. And you lack accountability, which can have a snowball effect throughout the team.